We'd all like to look good in our swimsuits this summer, but skipping meals here and there, trying to shed a few extra pounds, may not be the solution. In fact, new research shows when you eat may be just as important as what you eat. So now we turn to Maggie Boyd, a registered dietitian at Parkland Health, to explain the do's and don'ts of healthy eating. Maggie, thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
So I'll start off by asking you, how exactly does when you eat actually impact weight loss or weight gain?
So with this circadian rhythm idea, it's our biological clocks telling us when to wake up, when to go to bed, and when to eat. So if we eat during the part of the day we're most active, you potentially have the chance to burn the most calories you eat during that time of day.
And how do we figure out when that is? Is that when we're maybe at work or home with the kids, that golden period, if you will, when we should be eating?
So everyone's going to be a little bit different based on if you work out in the morning,
Sure.
if you don't work out, or what hours you work. But the most important part is waking up and starting your day with breakfast and not skipping that breakfast and ending up craving things that you may not want to be eating later in the day.
A lot of people do that, thinking I'll just skip it and I'll have some lunch later on. But I want to talk about this concept of front loading, right? So eating a lot of food earlier in the day. How exactly does that work, and how is that maybe even beneficial for us?
So research showed that individuals who front loaded and ate more calories earlier in the day tended to lose more weight than those who ate their bigger meals later in the day. However, you know, like I said, each individual is going to be a little bit different, but if you start your day with a good breakfast and fueled, you're likely to make better choices later in the day than if you skipped your breakfast, maybe kind of snack through lunch, had more snacks than a large dinner because you're ravishing. Is
it true that even front loading can help as far as potentially avoiding diabetes or cardiovascular disease? Are there some actual benefits in that way when you eat more earlier in the day?
So if you tend to skip breakfast or do not eat more early in the day, it's going to change how you eat throughout the day. So if you're front loading and eating breakfast, having snacks, and eating every couple of hours, that could be considered front loading.
Okay.
But if you skip that breakfast and then have a really large meal later, those characteristics may be associated with increased risk for diabetes and heart disease.
Okay, so generally speaking, just for the record now, is it ever healthy or safe to just skip a meal entirely?
I would not recommend skipping a meal I would not recommend that.
Okay, so then that brings us to my last question, grazing, this idea of maybe eating more frequently throughout the day, maybe smaller meals throughout the day. I understand that that can work for some people, but when it comes to later on in the evening, it might not be the best idea. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so on personal experience, if I graze throughout the day, you know, I have a handful of nuts here, then another handful, and then an apple, and then you end up snacking throughout the day and taking in more calories than if you were just to have a meal. So grazing can lead to overconsumption of calories if you're not mindfully eating.
All right, and just be aware, of course, that everybody's body and their rhythms and everything is different, so really pay attention to what works for you, and that's how you figure out when you should be eating.
Yeah, so pay attention to what you eat, how much you eat, and when you eat.
All right, Maggie, thank you so much for that information. Really appreciate it. Hopefully that helps you guys out there. So coming up next, we're going to talk about that weather. It's actually getting pretty